Awesome. So, hi everyone. Thanks. I'm excited to be here today. My name's Emily Stiles, and I'm the Assistant Director for Career Development here at RPI. Part of my role is working directly with students, obviously, specifically in the School of Engineering. I also am the liaison for graduate students as part of my role. And so I'm excited to be here today to talk a little bit about industrial management engineering and how we can support you also just through your, career journey as you're here, going through RPI. So there's a lot of different ways we support students in their job search, but we do a lot about career exploration and sort of deciding on helping students decide on a major that's appropriate or an industry they might want to get into, really depending on what that student is looking for. And one of the biggest ways we do that is actually through collecting statistics from our alumni. So, where are our alumni going to work after graduation? What are the salaries that they're being offered? What are some of the industries that they're getting into? Are they going on to graduate school? All of those things to kind of give a snapshot to our current students the possibilities for after they graduate. And so we wanted to share a little bit with you today about what we have for students for industrial and management engineering. So I looked at the class of 2020 statistics and just picked some examples of employers that students who graduate with a degree in industrial and management engineering, where they go on to work, right? The full list is on our website, on the CCPD website. So like I said, I just kind of pulled a couple different employers, but the full list, again, is on our website, and you should definitely take a look at that survey. I think there's a lot of really great information to be shared that we want we want our students to see. But we have companies like Amphenol, Global Foundries, BAE Systems, Oracle, Irving Tissue, Regeneron, L'Oreal, Texas Instruments, NASA, General Dynamics, Timken Companies, Deloitte. Um, all these different places are hiring our students and then specifically have hired students who have majored in industrial and management engineering. So really just to get a good idea too of the types of employers you could be working for down the line, whether it's through an internship or through for a full-time position. We also have a lot of opportunities for current industrial and management engineers in our career management platform called Handshake. So if you're not on Handshake yet, we encourage you to get on Handshake. It's one of the main ways that you can sort of not only interact with our office, but find these really great opportunities, again, for full-time and internship positions. I tried to pull a couple of different, variety of things, but there's really so many in there that you might be interested in as an industrial and management engineer, or even if you're just interested in that field, right? So there's so many great opportunities. But there's Verizon is currently hiring, Honda Aircraft Company, TRC companies, Procter and Gamble for manufacturing internships, supply chain strategy, quality engineers, all these different employers looking for students who do fall in that industrial and management major. Again, this is definitely not a full list. I just pulled a couple that sort of popped out to me and were super recent, right? So in Handshake 2, jobs are, posted for the duration of how long they're open for. So I just pulled some ones that were recently posted. So I definitely recommend you get on Handshake and start to see the different opportunities there. A really great feature about Handshake that I do want to mention is not only can you do a job search, you can also do a company search. So if you just want to explore different companies that might be in the industry you're interested in or might be, hiring industrial management engineers, you can sort of do a general search, and instead of getting jobs kicked back to you, you would actually get a list of companies where you can actually learn more about the company, what they do, what roles they're potentially hiring for, or what's the primary roles they have in their company. So that's another really great way to learn a little bit more about your industry and your field by doing a company search and seeing what those companies are doing. So then we have salary statistics, right? This is a big one when students see us, what's my earning potential? And so we did want to share this with you today. So most of our information is from our own survey for the class of 2020. Just keep in mind this is of those reporting, right? So we don't necessarily aren't able to capture every year every single student that graduates. But for those who are industrial management engineers who completed the survey, the average salary was about 74,500, and the range of accepted salaries was anywhere from 60,000 to 98,800. So these are students, undergraduate students who are graduating with their bachelor's, and what they're sort of earning after graduation. The important thing to note, this is obviously with a variety of different companies and potentially even different positions, but all of these individuals had the industrial and management major upon graduation. I also went to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They have some really great resources. And I just wanted to highlight for 2020, what was the median pay? So, what 50% of industrial and management engineers made more than this, and then 50% made less than this. So this is another good way to sort of, again, gauge earning potential. So the median was 88,950. And again, important to note that this is of all different professional levels and years of experience. So you may or may not, be able to earn this much right upon graduation, but this is just a good gauge. If you're entering salary negotiations or you want to sort of know, what you should be looking for, sites like the Bureau of Labor Statistics, our own resources at the school, Glassdoor.com, salary.com, are all really great ways to get an idea of what your earning potential could be upon graduation. So I mentioned that there's so much we do for students. I talked a little bit about how we can, focus on career exploration or looking at different types of positions you might be interested in. But we can also help just throughout your career development while you're here at RPI and even after. So we work with alumni as well. We can look at your application materials. Is your resume appropriate for industrial management engineering? Is it going to highlight the skills and education and experiences that an employer is looking for? Is your cover letter focused on why you would be a good candidate? Maybe you're interested in grad school after graduation. We can help you with finding that right program or how to look at different programs, helping you with that application. We do a lot with mock interviewing, right? Especially, coming off of the career fair, we've been doing a lot of interview prep with students, so we can do mock interviews or just, discussions about the interview process. And then kind of up to accepting that job, right? Whether it's an internship or a full-time position, we can talk to you about how to sort of navigate a job offer, look at salary negotiations for full-time positions, and sort of, again, assessing that offer too. What constitutes a good offer? What are the things you should be looking at on top of just your salary? So that's, I did want to, snapshot all that we can do for you here in the CCPD. My Kristen is the other counselor for the School of Engineering, and so she's a great resource. We have Erica and Bulos as well, who meet with engineers. So we really have a great team, really prepared to meet with all of you and sort of help you support you through wherever you're at in your own career development, even if it's just a conversation about where to start. Those are some of my favorite appointments with students, is just introducing what we do and what we can do for you and sort of hearing what you are looking for. So definitely come to the office. We offer appointments in person or virtually, right? So we are really trying to connect with students in any way possible. So that's the end of my presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions, and my email is right here. Definitely feel free to email me at any time about any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Emily.
You're welcome.
So the career fair, I can't even believe that was 2 weeks ago now, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, you guys must finally be waking up after all that
Yeah.
chaos.
Mhm.
So say that a first year didn't go to the career fair and now,
Mhm.
they're realizing that they did want to engage. They just maybe weren't ready,
Mhm.
having been on campus for 3 weeks and then going, I'm not really ready for that. If they want to kind of gear up starting now, what would your advice to them be? Are there info sessions for the remainder of the semester? What do you think they should be doing?
Yeah, I think so. There's still a couple. quite a few opportunities to engage with employers and also prepare for the spring career fair that's in early February. So a couple things we have coming up off the top of my head. The October 13th, so next Wednesday is we're actually doing an engineering and architecture industry networking night. And that's from 4 to 8 p.m. It's virtual through Handshake, but think of it as a mini career fair. So a lot of companies, I believe we have over 60 companies attending. So it's even though it's a mini career fair, it's actually still pretty big. But
I was gonna say 60 is pretty big.
it's a recruitment opportunity, for these employers, but also for students to just get more information. The great thing about these virtual career fairs through Handshake is companies can offer one-on-one sessions, but they're also offering group sessions. And so if you're trying to just dip your toes in and just sort of get a feel for what it's like, those group sessions might be a really great opportunity. They serve a little bit more like an info session, but they might tend to be somewhat smaller groups. Again, it depends on the company. Those popular companies, the groups are pretty big. Um, but maybe push yourself to ask a question in the chat box or answer a question when it's asked of you. Again, just dip your toes in. It's not a big commitment, but it will help just get you more comfortable with employers. And those one-on-one sessions are great too. If you're not job searching yet, but you just want to get a feel and get an idea for what the company has to offer. Yes, these companies are recruiting for internships you might not be looking for or full-time positions you're not ready for, but they're always looking to see, think ahead. Can they encourage students to apply down the line for the internship in 2023 versus now, right? So these are really great opportunities to just get your name out there, build your connections, because when you are ready to job search, the value of connections is really strong. So I think taking that opportunity to help stand out is great. These fairs are great. There are separate info sessions happening outside of the fair. All of that information is in Handshake, and I'm sorry, I should have actually printed that out and had it available. But they are happening, I would say between this week, we do have a couple Wednesday and Thursday, and next week, and then it starts to slow down for the semester a little bit as we get closer to November. But again, that spring career fair in February, these industry networking nights are a great way to just sort of dip your toes in and prepare for that fair.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds like a great thing to do right now if you missed the
Mhm.
fair and you're not, you want to get started.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna ask you one more question,
Sure.
and I don't necessarily expect you to have an answer, but of course I'm
Okay.
curious. Um, do you think the spring career fair will be in person or will it be virtual too?
I pretty confidently think it'll be virtual.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be
I don't
virtual.
need to put the pressure on, I'm just
No, no,
curious.
it's a great question. I think that everyone's excited to potentially have something in person, but I just don't foresee things changing so much with allowing guests on campus that we could have such a large event. And I think the issue is also that spring career fair in particular, just like the Nesby Shep Fall Career Fair, is huge. Like the crowds get large. So I think if we want to keep it that same size, it would be virtual. Um, so maybe, in the fall or the next spring after, in 2023 we can, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it'll be virtual for the spring.
Honestly, and I don't know why I didn't think about it as we're hosting Industry Hour remotely because we can't have guests on campus. That makes a lot of sense to me because you're
But I
right.
want to give one plug. I want to give one plug to virtual career fairs because I think, um, and I love in person too. I'm a big in person, social. I love it. But the one really great thing about a career fair is if you sign up for a one-on-one session with a recruiter, that is a guaranteed uninterrupted 10 minutes with that recruiter that you wouldn't get in person. So while we have these virtual events, I know it's not the same, but a career fair can get a little hectic in person. There's a lot of noise, a lot going on. So this is like if it was me and one other student in our WebEx room, that's what it's like when you sign up for those one-on-ones. So, I would say capitalize on that opportunity while it's available. So that's just one plug. I know I want in person too, but there are benefits to the virtual world, right? So that's one of them.
Yeah, I love that plug, and I feel like that's a really great thing to mention, and I feel like we should spread that one around.
Mhm.
It's, when you get the lemonades, right? Like, or when you have the lemons make lemonade. I'm really
Right.
bad at expressions, but
Exactly. This is the lemonade. Yes, this is the lemonade.
uh, well, we all like lemonade.
Yep.
All right. Thank you so much, Emily.
Yeah,
Really
thank you.
appreciate you hanging with us.
Of course. Awesome. I hope everyone has a great night. Bye.
All right. And now is the part where Val takes over the reins and the panel begins. So I will disappear.
I'll unmute myself to do that. Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Valerie Swenson, and I am an academic advisor in the School of Engineering First Year Advising Hub for industrial and management engineering students. And I actually advise second and third year IME students as well for this year. So with that in mind, two very exciting panelists we have here with us today. So I'll be asking a bunch of questions of both Katie and Parker. So basically got a couple questions going and we'll go ahead and get started. So let's think here. So Katie, I'll have you go first and then Parker second. We'll kind of keep that order throughout this, if that's cool. And the first thing isn't really necessarily a question, but if you could, please introduce yourself, your name, where you work, where you're from, and where you live now. If not, Troy RPI. And then also, Katie is an alum, and then Parker is a current student, but yeah, just basically those three things then, right? So your name, where you work currently, and then where you're from, where you live.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Katie. I graduated in 2017 as a Design Innovation Society and Industrial Management dual major. I currently work at Price Chopper Market 32 at their headquarters in Schenectady, New York, so just down the hill on the other side of the river. And I'm actually from the Schenectady area originally, so I didn't go too far away from my home. And currently a practicing industrial engineer in the operations and store operation side for Price Chopper Market 32.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. And my name is Parker Shaver. I'm a senior industrial engineer here at RPI. I'm originally from Bethany Beach, Delaware, so I've traveled a little further than Katie has. Um, but yeah, and so I'm here in Troy.
All right, perfect. Thank you both. So, the first question I'll ask of both of you is what made you decide to be an industrial and management engineer? And Katie, we'll start with you.
I came in for Design Innovation Society in the School of Haas. That was my main focus, and then pairing it with an engineering degree to kind of have both the arts and the engineering. Originally coming in as a mechanical engineer, quickly realizing that that wasn't my forte and my strong suit, and my parents had a bet on how soon I was going to be switching to industrial engineering. My father did win that one, and I wound up changing my major second semester freshman year. So I didn't necessarily know it, but I did know it because I really liked the operations side of things and how things functioned and more the systematic side of things. So I wound up becoming officially an IME second semester freshman year.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. And I actually came in as an IME. I knew that I wanted to be an IME probably since like junior, senior year of high school. Coming from a place that's pretty high in tourism, we have pretty large variation in the amount of people who live in Bethany, and we have like a few like beach resorts there. And so one of the things that always impressed me was how these resorts have such large operations. Even things that seem as simple as like laundry are just extremely complex when you're dealing with like such a large scale. And I learned that a lot of times these problems are solved by IMEs, maximizing transportation routes and work into these processes and making sure they're as efficient as possible. And so that pretty much sold me. And then I think after sitting through that seminar class, Intro to ISE, and getting to hear all the professors' work, that's when I finally said, okay, yes, I'm in the right spot.
Oh, that's awesome. See, it's the kind of stuff I don't get to learn usually working with students. That's perfect. All right, Katie, so this next question will be for you, kind of going off of you saying, you know, you initially started as an IME and then ended up switching and dualing after arriving at RPI. Can you talk a bit about that decision? You know, so you said you started mechanical and then you kind of realized that these different things were for you. So I guess the decision-making process behind that.
So my dad is an engineer and a professor at RPI, so he was a big help and influence in that. But I also talked to Professor Foley at the time, before he retired. He was involved in my studio class second semester, and because he came from like the IME background, I got talking with him, and he had a lot of connections to healthcare and like the processes for like ERs, how to like get people in as efficiently as possible. And he kind of opened my eyes to the other opportunities that my mom's a nurse, but I never would have thought for like an ER, oh, you might need somebody to look at those efficiencies, who like kind of the trauma, like order of like who needs to be treated first and things like that. And it was after talking to him, and I think I talked to Marie Diffenbach as well. I'm trying to get like different perspectives of people that were both like working engineers, but also for advisors, and kind of discussing with them the different options and would that fit in with it, and ultimately decided that like I do like the systematic things. I like seeing the processes from A to Z, seeing all of those interconnected parts that a lot of people just are often like, oh, it's isolated to one thing, but then seeing the ripple effect of it really kind of helped me decide like, yes, I want to be an IME, and once I switched, never looked back.
Awesome, thank you. And for anyone who does not know, Marie is actually an advisor within the School of Engineering Hub too. So bit of a plug there for the hub, but also for, you know, using your connections and figuring out what's out there. So thank you. All right, so let's see here. And that's very helpful because, as you know, many of the students who will be viewing this are undeclared engineers, and we do probably have some students who are considering IME. Perhaps they're another major that isn't quite IME yet, but we hope that they will join us. All right, so let's see here. Katie, I'll actually ask you this next question too while we're on a roll with you. So this is basically based upon materials that you'd sent in before. So this is actually a good follow-up from having had the CCPD and Emily on the line just now. So you had indicated the importance of the career fair, learning, and being grade conscious to a degree, but that is not everything. So kind of can you expand upon that and give some advice to students?
Absolutely. I was I would say timid freshman, but my residential director had like pushed me and said like go to the career fair, kind of even if you don't go and talk to anybody, just walking around and taking in that environment. Granted, online is very different right now, but trying to establish some of those connections, making those face to face or virtual, even just meeting with some different recruiters. I went up to J&J and they were hiring strictly IT and did not know that. Wound up coming out with like a Band-Aid and like first aid kit from it, but at the same time, it really like made me realize the importance of making sure you know the companies that you're looking into. Are they even hiring for your major? I went up to a civil engineering company and they're like, well, what do you want to do as a mechanical engineer? And I'm like, I made a mistake. And it's just those learning experiences that are really vital, I think, to be able to be confident once you are looking for an internship or a full-time job, because it just makes it so much easier once you're comfortable pitching yourself, being able to sell your skills and things like that. The other thing I'm very open about is that I graduated with under a 3.0. And I know a lot of people tend to be grade conscientious, saying like, I need to have a 3.5 or a certain GPA so that the companies will hire me. But a lot of times it's just making those connections. I went to an info session for SHIC, and one of the ladies was hiring for a program management position, and she had said focus groups, and I had just completed a project with focus groups, so I could explain like my experiences with that and tie it into hers. And she saw my grades and she's like, well, they're a little low, but you know what? I'll still interview you. I have a couple time slots. I'll interview you. And wound up getting my co-op with SHIC. And without that, like, wasn't deterred. I know a lot of people are like, it's the GPA, and it is, but it's also making those connections and being able to email them and say like, okay, I don't have the grades, but I have these skills and we've talked before, or who else can I reach out to that might have those connections, and they really pay off down the line, because I applied for an internship with Verizon junior year, I think. And right after I had started working for Price Chopper full time, I had gotten a call from Verizon saying, "Oh, we found your resume from when you applied for an internship, and we would like to interview you for a full-time job." Something I'm like, I forgot I applied for you because I immediately got the rejection email, and I'm like, okay, but I put myself out there. But you never know when somebody might come across your resume and say like, oh, I really like their skills, or I want to interview them. So definitely be open to that and don't be deterred by it. I know like Honda and some of the big ones, Boeing, they won't look at you if you're under, but some of those smaller companies can give you just as much experience, if not more, and allow you to do a lot more because they have less resources. So they're willing to put you on more projects and you gain a lot more experience through that.
That is all such good advice and so good following up from, having Emily on the line from the Career Center and then also following up from the career fair that just happened too. So thank you for that. And Parker, this next question is for you. So you have recently returned from a professional experience. You had, I believe it was an internship over the summer, correct? And then a co-op in the spring?
Yeah, so
Okay.
it kind of, the names, they kind of use them interchangeably where I where I went, but yeah, so starting in the spring for about 2 to 3 months, I worked for an environmental firm, Max Environmental, on a supply chain of like lead acid batteries, and that was an interesting experience to say for sure. I'm not sure how much I loved it because the environmental scene is not really my deal. But then afterwards, I got internship for I believe 6 months at United Airlines. So it was remote, but I got to go to Chicago for a whole month. And I was working on the continuous improvement and enterprise optimization team. So it's a team like full of IMEs. I felt right at home. Um, and we get to tackle like some of the big problems in airlines. So the projects I was on, one of them was how do we track how good of a job we're doing at the baggage claims? So I was looking at data and sensors and doing some stat analysis. Um, Another project I worked on was if anyone has flown or looked at the news recently, they probably saw a lot of fuel crises um, with airlines. A couple different airports just had no one taking off because they just didn't have any fuel to load the planes with. We were doing essentially a big transportation problem, a big like fuel allocation problem of like where do we fill up the planes with fuel? Like how much fuel do we give them? Like we got to make sure they have enough to make it. Sometimes we give them extra if they're going to an airport that doesn't have any fuel. So we're doing like a very large network problem, which was super cool to see, and they're still working on it now. It's super huge, but it was cool, like meaningful work. Um, and then off of that, I actually will continue to work there in January, so I get to the opportunity to go back, which is super exciting. And I'll probably go right back onto that same project because I believe it's still going. Um, that's fantastic news, and I'm really excited. It's located in Chicago, so I'm traveling far
Sounds
away.
so
I get to
cool.
see the Midwest. But overall, just a fantastic experience, and I'm super grateful for the opportunity to have such a long continuous time off to do the project. I know anyone who's an IME United does this same internship every year, and it's 6 months long, and it's perfect for the art student. That's why like RPI students have had success and probably will continue to have success there, is because it's that time slot that some students can't do without taking a semester off, but you kind of get that directly built in.
That's awesome, and congrats again. So
Thank you.
exciting. Also, a good plug for that amount of time that you're able to have. And, something we talk about with students is it's important to figure out what you want to do, but also figure out what you don't want to do. So it seems like, experience all around is a good thing, and you've landed, no pun intended, um, with United. So that's perfect. Great. So, let me see. My next question. Let us kind of continue with the career bit. Um, I would say, let's see here. I guess we'll start with you, Katie. So, if you could talk a bit about, the day-to-day function of your position and maybe IME in general too. So, two separate questions, really.
Day to day, I do something different every day. That's kind of why I love my job. I know some people like routine and whatnot, but I love being able to be thrown in on a bunch of different projects. Right now, I'm currently working on a software implementation for store operations that's impacting like the whole company. So that's just something that's different from my routine, but I'm also implementing a new software specifically for the engineering labor standards. So how a store earns their time based on what goes through the scanner at the register, how much time they're earning to, say, make donuts or things like that. All the intricacies that go on within a grocery store that a lot of people take for granted. So that's currently what I'm working on. But yeah, so the engineering standards, a lot of it uses basic most, which I don't know if there's any classes that are currently teaching that. Parker, you might be able to speak to that, but
Yeah, work
I took
systems,
work
analysis of work
systems.
systems. Yeah.
Yeah, I took that my last semester, and then during my interview was asked like, "Oh, do you know basic most?" And I'm like, "I'm currently learning it right now. I'll be done in like a few weeks." Um, so that would be probably the class that helped like kind of seal the deal for me, and knowing that like that's kind of where I wanted to start. And doing that, which is every motion is broken down, and it may seem like very tedious and trivial, but when you look at how it builds up to everything else, you kind of see I see from like a store level and from like a department level how that all plays into each other. So that's what I'm currently working on. So it's not necessarily the routine in my day to day, since it is a big project and undertaking right now.
Very nice. All right, and then Parker, I will ask kind of the same question of you if you wanted to talk about your most recent internship with United. So if you could kind of talk about the day-to-day function of your position.
Yeah, I think like Katie touched on so many great points, right? You don't do the same thing every day, and that's what's super exciting. I think another point of like my internship is it's so heavy in collaboration. Um, I know like I thought in RPI that I didn't like group projects. I was like, I don't like group projects because, they're difficult and they're for a grade. But, you in my job, I was on top teams and I would have to rely on my team members repetitively throughout like different projects. And it was like a really cool experience. So, a lot of it was I get handed a problem or, my portion of the project and it's not obvious for interns, especially, I was new there, but everyone has the same experience. You can't be expected to know everything about the airline. And so, you sit there and you say, who can I talk to? And you really have access to anyone in the company. So I'd be like, oh, I need help with fueling. Let me just go call up the fueling division and, schedule a 15 minutes meeting with them to ask them questions. Um, and so it really is a great, I think, major and a great career path for, not letting things get stale, right? Because I'll learn everything there is to know about airport fueling 1 year, and then the next year I'll be on staffing and I'll be doing all staffing. So I'll get to know everything about staffing in like the pilot program. And then maybe after I'll be back on baggage. So, projects like that really keep you invested. You're never really stuck in one track. Also, just like what do I do in a day? It kind of varies. Simulation. Well, I'll be coding some of the day. I'll be, running some stat stuff some of the day. I'll be doing interviews. I know one of the interns who was alongside of me did a time study where she'd go to the planes at like 2 in the morning, which is insane because they couldn't, do it during business hours. Um, and she would, watch people clean the planes and time them and take notes and say, okay, here's how we're going to better the process. Here's, where we're missing time. Here's where we can cut. Here's what we can't cut. And so it really is like a bit of an adventure where, you can't sit there and say, this is what I'm going to be doing, 5 years from now, or even maybe a couple months from now. Super exciting.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for that. And again, some good plugs for classes from the two of you as well. And it seems like applying what you've learned. Um, all right, so let's see here. My next question I have for you both. Let's see. So this is going to be kind of some more general questions. So, my next question, I guess, would be because you both had professional experiences, and we've been touching upon that a lot, do you have advice for students in terms of getting involved both on campus and then also pursuing internships? So Katie, we'll start with you.
Um, so take any leadership opportunities you can. I know they may seem like insignificant when you're at RPI, or like leading a committee may seem like really small, but any leadership experience is just room to grow. I was a RA when I was on campus. I was president of my sorority for a year, and everything built up because it had collaboration. Like Parker said, like it's working on teams, it's interacting with personalities that you may not get along with, and how do you handle that conflict? Um, and it just helps you become a better leader, no matter what capacity. Even being involved in an organization and not taking a leadership position, but being like very good about like going to meetings every week shows that you have like that discipline, and you have that like time management that really comes into play. So like everything that you become involved with just helps you grow as you're looking to go professionally, and like to potentially look at internships. And I know that I used my sorority experiences, my studio classes as a lot of examples when interviewing, when they're like, oh, tell me a time when, because they're classic interview questions, but having those experiences and having 3 of them for conflict or 3 of them for collaboration just speaks to like when you didn't have a solution or it didn't work out well. Um, just it really does help. And then also you can network through them. I know for my sorority, I wound up talking to some of my alumni saying like, what do you have for internship experiences, or what do you have, what would you suggest from them who've been out for either a year or 5 years that have those experiences, to be able to say like, here's what I did and I didn't do it right, so don't make the same mistakes that I did. And that really does come into play because networking is around you a lot more. I remember senior year of high school saying, I'm never going to network when I go to RPI. I'll make it on my own and I'll be fine. And was I proven wrong very quickly? Of you depend on a lot of other people and you never know who knows who. So like somebody had like seen me with sorority letters, and they're like, oh, you're part of this sorority. They're like, oh, I know so and so, and like if you ever need anything, like call upon me and like I'll help you out. And it's just a huge network, especially with RPI having that name behind you and being able to have that support. People will be like, oh, this is really impressive, or oh, I know so and so, you should connect with them. And it really does help with some of those internships that you might be looking into, because I know a lot of RPI alumni do come back to recruit. So it's just one more connection that you have with a company that may make you look better when you're submitting your resume.
Great, thank you. And then I guess Parker, same question for you. Do you have advice in terms of for students getting involved on campus or pursuing internships during college?
Yeah, I think I got pretty involved heavily in different clubs and organizations and whatnot, later in my time at RPI. And I feel like I wish I knew a few things as a freshman. I think one of those being that, if you see something and you're interested in it, check it out. I think sometimes I would tell myself, I'd be like, oh, I already missed the first meeting, so now I can't go for the rest of the semester. Like, that is not the case. Like, if you see something and you think it's cool, like maybe it's a club, maybe it's major related, or maybe it's just for fun, it's such like a great environment, on this campus where like they'll welcome you with open arms if you show up halfway through the semester. So I'd say like, get over the hump of this is going to be awkward and just try it out, whether it's like a sport or like academic related or like leadership related. And then also, I think a lot of times like the people who are in leadership, like you join a club freshman year and you see the people who are like the presidents and they're almost like larger than life, and you're like, whoa, like that couldn't be me. Um, t- Take any leadership role you can. If you see one, run for it or like apply for it, because like you'll be qualified. Like you'll figure it out. Like they're not going to give you the position if you're not. So don't you don't sit there and say, well, I wouldn't be able to do it, because chances are you can, and afterwards you'll be like, all for the better. Um, yes, and I think look at the flyers around campus, see what's interests you. Talk to your RAs, talk to people, in your major of interest, or just people in your classes and say, hey, like, what do you do? What are you interested in? That's the best way for finding those kind of hidden gems around campus.
Great. Such good advice from both of you guys from that. Thank you so much. Um, so we're going to lead into another question that you kind of briefly touched upon a second ago, Parker. So we'll go Parker and then Katie. What else do you wish you knew as a first-year college student that you know now as a senior, as someone about to graduate?
I think, one thing I can think of for sure is just like how there for you, like the faculty and the staff is. I remember, your professors are like a little intimidating when you first start. And I remember I was talking to Jen Pazor, who's in the IME department, after, a little seminar class where each IME professor, a handful of them came in and presented their work. What did they teach? What did they do for research? And I came up afterwards and I was so nervous and I was like, "Oh, I thought your presentation was really cool." And I now do undergraduate research with her. And after talking to so many faculty members and being in so many classes with them, like they're really rooting for your success. And any questions you ask them, they're here to help you. Career wise, they'll give you advice. Course wise, they'll give you honest advice. Curriculum wise, so really like if you're confused about something, like there's no reason to sit there and just be confused, right? There's so many people who are willing to help you for like any level of question. Um, and then yeah, that's the best way to get involved. And I think it helps you get good grades too in your classes if you're a little more amicable with the professor. You show up to office hours, you get more out of it. Um, you're able to like communicate more and you kind of understand their style of teaching, they understand your style of learning. So that's my biggest piece of advice is get closer to your professors, get to know them. They're all really cool, especially in this department.
Thank you for that. All right, Katie, and the same question to you. What do you wish you knew as a first-year college student as you reflect several years after beginning?
Um, First thing, grades do matter, but they're not everything. I know that's like my biggest piece of advice. If you have internship experience, I had 4 different companies on my resume before I graduated between internships. That's what people are going to look for, and be willing to apply for jobs that you may not think you're qualified for. Like Parker had said, like if you are meant to be there and you have those experiences, they'll overlook the GPA, they'll overlook you missing XYZ from your resume. I can't tell you the amount of jobs that I applied to thinking it was a long shot and wound up getting at least a first round interview with them. So I'm like, you know what, it could be worse. My other piece of advice is get involved. No matter what you do, between the amount of organizations and activities and clubs on campus, there's something that you have to do. And if not, make your own club. I know that I think there were like 3 or 4 clubs that were just approved like recently, and because I still follow some of that. And you know what? There's something for you. Get involved, do what you love, find your passions, because those are what's going to drive you. Your job, you'll make money, but it's those passions, those things that you want to do outside of college that will ultimately be what drives you to want to like work and be able to have that free time and how you want to spend it.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. All right, so I guess my last question will be, we'll start with Katie again, and Parker will have you go last. I guess any additional advice for students who might be listening to this who are considering being an IME?
Reach out to professors and to like alumni or the CCPD. Utilize your resources if you're not sure. Be able to go like I wasn't sure from like an IME perspective. I loved project management when I was on co-op, but I also knew I was kind of like business oriented. So I tried. I worked for Pitney Bowes and a train company in North Troy for over the summer and wound up hating both of those, but it was a good experience for me to say like this is for the IMEs. I like the processes, I like the projects and things like that. And when I went to the warehouse for Price Chopper doing those processes and the time studies, I'm like, this is where I want to be. This is where I fit in. This is the kind of work I want to be doing. But it's trial and error. I knew just like Parker like didn't like his first one. I didn't like some of mine, but it's ultimately utilizing those experiences or talking to like the CCPD saying like, all right, what are my other options? Because I know I'm not like a huge heavy statistics person. I don't want to be crunching numbers and running statistical analysis, but give me the processes and I'll break them down for you into the really detailed components that you need. So it's just kind of finding your niche, because IME is like a huge umbrella. You've got supply chain, you've got statistics, you've got simulation. So it's finding those niche and what you really want to hone in and focus in on to like really say like, yeah, this is an IME position, and it may not seem like it from the front, but ultimately it's going to be something that's connected to IME.
Great, thank you. Parker?
I think I would say that if you're undecided and you're not sure and you're interested in going into IME, I would say probably do some reflection on, what do you want to be doing, right? Like what is your like work culture that you're looking for? I think Katie and I both express experiences, and a lot of IME experiences are very like team oriented. They're very like fresh, like new things every day. And so I know, like, I worked as a lifeguard once, and I was the most bored person in the world. I could not, like, I was just struggling to stay awake every day because it was just the same thing every single day. And that is just not something that I knew that I would want to do. So I think, like, think about, like, what kind of work are you looking to do? Like, what culture are you looking to do? And see if IME is something that interests you. If you're starting as, an early IME, I would say really take the time to explore all those different, flavors of IME. I think like there's some great technical electives and just like regular classes that are required that you get to explore. Like, do I like simulation? Well, I'll take, discrete event simulation. Do I like, facility design? Like that was one of my favorite classes, and I didn't even think I would like it, um, just from the name. And so, so I would say like really, take the time during your RPI career, regardless of whether you're in IME or not, to like explore different possibilities, because it's so much better to get out of college and say, I know exactly what I like and I know what I don't like, than to say, well, I did one thing this whole time and it was okay. I think I like it. You want to know, like, you want to get that experience because this is like the perfect playground to do so.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think it was a good question. Good, even better answers to kind of end everything off on. So that basically concludes the question asking portion of this program. Thank you both so much for your insight and your answers and your reflections. And I think that students watching this will get a lot out of it, definitely. And join us in IME, hopefully.
Yes,
Yes.
I second everything Val just said. And also I love ending on a note that compares higher ed to a playground, because it really is, and I've never thought about that before, Like, sure, it's advanced education, right? The classes are hard, but just like when you're on a playground, you're learning and experiencing, and I just love that, and there is so much to learn and experience while you're in college. So cool. So I guess we'll end it there tonight, if that is all right for you. And of course, Katie, thank you so much for joining us again. And I want to do a nice little plug for Parker, because you didn't know you were doing this until 2 hours ago, and you did a phenomenal job with those questions. So thank you so much for jumping on board and joining us tonight. And of course, Val, thank you so much. Does anyone have any last thoughts that they
Um,
share?
I would just say if anyone has any questions about IME they want to ask a student, you can find my email pretty easily through the RPI server. If I love talking about myself, I love even more talking about my major. So feel free to reach out. I'm sure Katie feels similarly. You can probably find her as well.
Awesome. That, I think, is always great. Students are always looking to make connections, and for many different reasons.
Yeah.
Not always necessarily hire me, but other important stuff too. All right, so we'll call it a night, and thank you again so much, everyone. I really appreciate it. As always, this was a great evening of IME, and I know every year we do get a bunch of undeclared to switch in, so we'll see how many we get this year. All right,
Awesome.
bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Have a good
Thank
night,
you.
everyone. Thanks again.